Jen, I'm not hearing your music.
Give me one sec.
I'm just letting you know that Betsy is eating lunch. And after I finish chewing, I'll let you see me.
All right.
So can you hear me? You can. Okay, great. I'm not sure
But
what's going
not the
on with
music.
the music, but let's just go ahead and get started.
All right. Greetings, everybody. In the name of Christ, I am Lillian Daniel, Michigan Conference Minister of the United Church of Christ. And as is our custom with our Zoom leadership lunches, we're going to open with a word of prayer. Gracious God, we ask your blessing on this group. We thank you that you can draw us together through the power of the Holy Spirit and technology. We lift up all those who are in this call. We recognize that we have many items on our to-do lists, many burdens we carry on our shoulders, concerns for those we love and the world we hold dear. And so we place all these burdens on the everlasting arms of Jesus as we breathe deeply and open our hearts to you and to each other in prayer and listening. Amen. Friends, it is good to be together, and today's topic is Dying to Give, which is a very interesting title that I will give credit to Andrew Warner for. He's going to be our special guest today, talking to us. But also, he is a member of our staff, and I want to also recognize another team member, another member of our staff at the Michigan Conference. Here you see Karen Metcalf. Maybe Karen can wave and say hello. Karen is helping us out in a number of areas. If any of you have been in the search and call process, you may have come across her, and she's working on communications. But Karen, let me give you an opportunity to say hello to everybody and tell them who you are.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Metcalf. I am the Minister of Children, Youth, and Families at my home church, Salem UCC in Farmington, Michigan. I recently joined the conference staff as a communications associate. And like Lillian said, I do all things communications. So that means newsletter, website updates, social media, and I also help with search and call.
So it probably seems like there's a lot of change, but some of it is changing places at the table. Jen Ringgold has been helping us out with communications, but is now really able to focus her time on her faith formation work and the Mitten Project. She's the director of that. And so we've been doing some transition from Jen to Karen on communications, but Jen's going to stick with this leadership lunch with us, as it definitely fits in the faith formation category. And Karen, we're so glad you're here. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Andrew Warner, who many of you probably already have met because he's been working with our staff for a while. But Andrew is has a very interesting background. He was a pastor at a local church. And then Andrew, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your journey?
Sure. Thank you, Lillian. And it's great to be with you here today for this lunch. So I was a longtime pastor in the Milwaukee area. I served my congregation for over 22 years and then transitioned to philanthropic work, working first with the national setting in the Wisconsin Conference, and then more recently switching that up, continuing my work with the Wisconsin Conference, and now getting to work with a great team here in the Michigan Conference. So in those roles, I'm helping people and congregations think about the ways in which we're raising, managing, and spending our money so that we can really do the work that God has called us to do in our particular ministry settings. So the ways in which I'm working with our Michigan congregations is often around issues of how to raise money. So I teach a course on helping congregations work on questions of what they're managing, how they're managing their assets. So there's just yesterday I talked to a congregation who's trying to think about how to handle a $250,000 gift that they received. So or how do we organize our priorities and our budget, and how do we manage the resources that we have. So those are some of the reasons why pastors and leaders in Michigan are reaching out to me, and some of the work that I love to do. Again, just helping people think about what are the faithful choices that we can make with our resources.
So, Andrew, can I ask you a personal question? I'm like, you were so happy. I met you as a friend and colleague when you were in ministry in Milwaukee, and I know how much you loved being a minister of a local church. Could you ever have pictured yourself in those days, getting into a role like this, and in particular one where you're dealing with a lot of spreadsheets and numbers and financial things?
I think that's one of the funny things about calls is that we don't always anticipate the direction in which our ministry will go, but sometimes there's friends and colleagues along the way who see things that we don't. So number of years ago, long before I thought about moving into this kind of work, the associate I was working with at the time, Bridget, and I were just reflecting about things that I like to do, and she said, like, it sounds like you want to be a CFO. And it was like her.
For the religion majors, what's a CFO?
Oh, yeah, Chief Financial Officer. So she was just reflecting back to me like some of the things I was good at and that I seemed to like. And I now I look back on it and think, oh, Bridget was seeing a budding new call in me that I didn't perceive at the time. And so I'm really thankful for friends who can see things that we might not see in ourselves.
Hey, what was your major when you were in college?
Oh my gosh, I've been geeky in church for a long time. I was a double major in religion, so focusing on the study of world religions. Yeah, I was just
Double.
fascinated by religion kind of early on. Yeah,
You've always been an overachiever, Andrew. Double major in religion.
yeah. It's
Um,
like I took all the religion classes in my college, basically.
that's hilarious. That's awesome. Oh, hey, where was college?
I went to Colgate University in upstate New York.
Fantastic. And you are originally from?
Oh, I grew up in Reston, Virginia, so outside of Washington, D.C. So around the Beltway, from where you lived for a little bit of your life, and but in the Washington, D.C. area. My family, particularly my dad's family, have been there since the Civil War, so long time Washingtonians.
Wow. Yes, Andrew and I share the fact I also went to high school in Bethesda, Maryland. Um, and I think our high schools were rivals, but I don't even know what high school you went to, Andrew.
South
Um,
Lakes.
yeah, never heard of it. Well, anyway, I think it's really nice to have people get to know you a little bit on a personal level because you are such a respected expert on dealing with financial issues in the life of the church, not just at the national setting where you worked or conference settings where we share you with Wisconsin Conference, but also helping local churches as they're just trying to figure out, do we have enough money to do this or to do that? What decisions do we make? And so you were the one who came up with this topic, Andrew, of dying to give. And so I want to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lillian. Yeah, I wanted to have this conversation about plan giving and trying to be a little cheeky with the title to make plan giving sound more interesting. And I think there's maybe two reasons why people might be engaging in this conversation. One, if you're a church leader who's thinking, oh, we ought to lift up plan giving in our congregation. We want to lift up that opportunity for people who are part of our congregation. And the other is that you might be considering yourself how you might want to make a plan gift. So
And
I'll
so,
talk about.
Andrew, can I just clarify? I never want to
Sure.
assume everybody knows the terms. So
Yeah.
when you say planned giving, you mean?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So a plan gift is really any gift in which you need a third party professional in order to make it. So I can write a check to my local church. I can do that on my own. I can go on the website and make a credit card donation. Those I can do on my own. But if I want to give a vacation home, I can't donate a vacation home just without going through some third-party professionals. So
Normally a
plan,
lawyer or
a
somebody.
lawyer, probably there's an appraiser, a real estate agent, accountant. There's a number of people who might be involved, say, in that particular gift.
Mhm.
So plan gift is that wide area of any gift of our assets. But today, I'm going to particularly be talking about planned gifts that are gifts that we might make in our estate. So those might be a gift in our will. They might be the designation of a charitable beneficiary of a financial account. Those are things that we might make as part of our estate plan. But plan giving does encompass everything from giving a stock to making a designation in our will or our trust. And there's a lot of ways that one can make those kind of gifts, but they all fall under that broad umbrella of planned gifts.
That's helpful because I think even I was sort of assuming planned giving almost always meant your will or your estate, but it's helpful to know that it's things, yeah, like what you listed there, a vacation home, which I would accept, Andrew.
Okay.
Mm.
I'll keep that in mind. So, when we think about planned gifts, often planned gifts involve a balancing of a couple of different questions. Often we're looking at balancing how we want to care for our loved ones, how we want to give to a charity, and how we want to avoid paying taxes. And so often there's a balance of those kinds of questions involved in making a planned gift. And really, I'll lift up some ideas around plan giving, but you'll want to consult your own tax and legal advisor for what's really appropriate in your own particular situation. As we think about plan giving, I find that many church leaders often focus on either an opportunity or a necessity. And so sometimes when I hear congregations talking about plan giving, they're focused on the opportunity. Hey, there's a big wealth transfer as a generation of people dies, and they're going to gift it to their heirs, but how can the church get a part of that inheritance? I also hear people talking in church circles about, hey, we need to promote plan giving because the church is going to need a new roof around the necessity of the church. I want to encourage you, if you're a church leader, to avoid talking about the needs of the church or the opportunity to receive some funds. Your donors don't want to hear about that. They don't really care about that. Instead, the way that I want you to approach plan giving and for you to think about it is to really focus on the needs of the donor. Why might your donors need to make a planned gift? Why might that be important to them? And so that's why I want to center all of our conversation today is not on why plan giving is beneficial to a church, but why plan giving matters for a donor, why it matters for a person. So as we do this conversation, I know we prayed at the beginning with Lillian. I ask you just to join me in a brief prayer as well. We're going to pray with our breath. And we're going to breathe in 3 times and breathe out 3 times, and just maybe put your hand on your chest so you can feel your lungs. So in and out 3 times. I really value these kind of embodied prayers of learning to pray with our body and not just with our words and our mind. But I also love praying this way because it reminds me of what is essential in generosity. When we are born, the baby is squeezed through the birth canal, and the very first thing the baby does is inhale, take a big, receive a huge breath. That gift of life comes as the first breath that we take in. And the last thing that we do when we die is we exhale. Sometimes if you're with someone who dies, you can hear it, this final exhalation. That's a rhythm that we're involved in throughout our whole life, receiving and giving, receiving and giving. It is inherent to who we are as humans. That's why I think the practice of generosity isn't just something that's a necessary thing for our institutions, but it's really a necessary thing for me as a being, because my life is shaped by this cycle of receiving and giving. And whenever we're inviting people to think about generosity, we're asking them to think about how is that rhythm of generosity, how's that rhythm of receiving and giving going to shape their life. Plan giving is ultimately that chance to say, where in this process of receiving and giving am I going to place myself? Where am I going to be in this rhythm? So the first reason I think that it's important for donors to engage in plan giving is because this is a deeply spiritual practice. It is centered in the rhythm of our life. It is really becomes a profound question. Given all that I've received over the course of my life, given all the different ways that I've been gifted, what do I want to give back? And plan giving fundamentally is a pastoral conversation, is a spiritual conversation about how do I want to gift back at the end of my life? How do I want to release into the world, share back some or all of what I've received over my lifetime? When I'm talking with people who are making plan gifts, these are some of the questions that are often at the forefront of their minds. They're thinking about places that have deeply shaped them, that they're grateful to, that they want to give back to. And I think of a woman I know named Sally. She had come to a church late in life. Her husband had died, and she had spent many years caring for him. And she was grief-stricken when he died, and started to, was aware that she needed to find community. And a friend of a friend suggested a grief group at the local UCC church. And so she started attending the grief group. That really ministered to her and touched her and helped her through the process of grieving her husband's death. And she found a community of friends and got involved. Now she's really active in that church community. That group became her church family. They're deeply important to her. And so as she's making her estate plan, she's decided to leave a gift to that church community because they are part of her family. And just as she takes care of nieces and nephews, she wants to take care of her church family. It's her way of expressing the gratitude for a place that shaped her life. Another example, there's a donor I know named Michael who has his family has a vacation home. I don't think that he's going to leave it to Lillian, but Michael has a beautiful vacation home that's been important to his family for many years. He's created a trust that continues to maintain that home for his children and hopefully their descendants. But he's also included a gift to the local church in that community because the church has also been part of his experience in that vacation land and is an important community for him. And, he's honest. He knows, hey, we're in a rural area. This is a small church. I don't know what the future may hold, but I trust the leaders of this community to figure out that future. And so he's giving his gift, mostly to help his kids have this vacation home, but also so that they have a rich community to have that home in. And so again, thinking about what's a community that has shaped him that he wants to give to.
So
But plan
Andrew,
gift,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here just for fun here about
Sure.
plan giving because this was one of the polls I thought would be good. I think sometimes the very people who need to hear about plan giving avoid hearing about it because we might feel guilty that perhaps our own affairs are not in order or we haven't got
Yeah.
our own will right. And I know you're not going to shame us, but I did ask Jen, I thought it would be interesting to do a poll where we let you know how many of us have our own personal will that is up to date, which I would say, it doesn't count if you're leaving everything to somebody you're no longer married to from 25 years ago or, up to date. So
Yeah.
fill out this poll and then Andrew will have this information. And don't worry, this is completely anonymous. And as you're doing that, I'm going to apologize. I turned my camera off because I keep sneezing. I got something out of the garage and I'm having an allergic reaction to it. I think it might be the conversation about planned giving, but I'm going to blame it on the garage.
So we've all voted. I'm going to share the results.
Yes.
So if you'll see, about 55% of us have not, don't have an up-to-date will, and 45% of us do. And this is actually much better than what we typically see in our country. So typically in our country, only about 25% of people these days have an up-to-date will. So 75% no recent will or no recent plan. As Lillian said, they might be leaving it to an ex-husband from 30 years ago, which is might not be what they would intend today. So this is then the practical reason why I think as church leaders, we want to engage people in our congregations to talk about plan giving, because there's a spiritual component. We want people to think about what they're grateful to, what they want to give back to. But the practical reason is that we want everyone in our communities to have an estate plan. Whether or not they leave a charitable gift to our congregation, that part of our pastoral care for the people that Jesus has brought into our lives and our churches is to care for them in creating estate plans. So that might mean engaging this conversation with a couple that's getting married in your church, with parents who are bringing a child for baptism, for parents that are signing their youth up for a faith formation project with a mitten project. For all different stages of life, we want to be asking this question, because what happens when people don't have a will is can be messy. A friend of mine was the executor for her father's estate, and he did not have a will, so it was going to probate. And she had to figure out what was fair in terms of caring for her father's girlfriend and her father's descendants, because there was no guidance from her father of what was the fair way to do this. And I've seen this both in heterosexual and same-sex couples. This can be very complicated when someone doesn't have a will about what's going to happen to their estate.
So Andrew, just can I ask a definition question again?
Sure.
I've heard this said that if you don't have a will, it will go to probate. Tell us what that means. What does go to probate mean?
Well, it means a couple of things. One, it means that the court is involved in deciding what your wishes would have been. So, in particular for unmarried couples, this can have a lot of implications. So, like I live in the state of Wisconsin, without a will or without the ability to be married to my husband, the state would then make a series of assumptions about where my assets should get divided. And so, if I was unmarried, and not having a will, the state could decide, well, your estranged homophobic brother is actually your next of kin, and he should receive your estate. And that's not what I would want, and so this is where the state can come in and make decisions about our lives that may not reflect our values. And that's when it gets messy and problematic.
And it also makes it take a lot longer for the family,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
It adds a whole layer of stress to the family that's survives.
It adds time and stress to navigate it through it. And if there's conflict in the family, that just delays the process. And so if we don't make a plan for our heirs or our loved ones and we die, then we set them up for conflict of fighting over what's going to happen. And it doesn't have to do with the value of the stuff. It just has to do with the nature of the relationships. People can fight over amazingly small amounts of money because they're going to fight.
We never see that in churches, Andrew.
Never. That never happens in Michigan churches, I know. So this is a practical way we as church leaders can care for people in our community. It's a practical way that we as people can care for loved ones in our lives, is to set up a plan in advance. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can, the other practical benefit, I think, of doing some good plan giving work is that we can manage the tax consequences of passing on assets. And so in my own life, when I was making an estate plan, I decided to take my traditional IRA and to designate that to charity. So when I die, whatever is left in that charitable IRA will go to a charity. I did that because while my kids will inherit most of my estate, I did want to make a gift to charity. And I realized that for them, inheriting the traditional IRA would have a higher tax consequence than if they received something else from my estate. So there are particular circumstances that you might want to look at, like, oh, I want to give something away. And oh, if I give this thing away, I get some tax benefits. Or my kids get some tax benefits. Another donor named John had inherited a family farm years ago, rented out the farm, and then a cousin was able to buy it. So he had that asset. He missed the rental income from not having the farm, so he set up what's called a charitable annuity. So he got then ongoing income payments for the rest of his life, and then when he dies, three charities that he's designated benefit from what's left after of the annuity after he dies. So he was able to get his income. There's some tax advantages to it, and care for some charities.
It's very interesting.
So there's a lot of different ways that we can make gifts, but I guess what I would want people to know is that really anything that you have of value is something that you can give away as a gift, and that the more intentional you are about planning, the better that we take care of not just the charity that we might support, but also that we take care of our loved ones, because we get to enact our values in it. Just a few more things. I do want to demonstrate a new tool that we have for the conference, and then hold space for your questions.
Oh, this is exciting because,
Yeah.
because one of the things I hear from people is a lot of times they haven't gotten the will done because they anticipate an expensive lawyer fee or something like that. And so this tool is something I'm really excited that Andrew's going to share with us.
Yeah. So we'll jump to that now. So the tool is from a company called freewill.com, and we have a specific site for the Michigan conference. And what Free Will's mission to do is they provide a legally valid online option for writing a will or trust or estate plan online. Now, the charities that might benefit from this resource are the ones that are funding it. In our case, it's the pension boards has brought this resource into the United Church of Christ. So it's through the pension boards that we're able to offer this to our churches in Wisconsin and Michigan. So when so on this site, I think for most people living in Michigan, this will be a great site to use. If you have a complicated estate, if you have a very complicated family, or if your net assets are more than $5 or $6 million, you probably want to hire a lawyer just to create your own custom plan. In that case, you can use Free Will as a way to draft up your intentions to bring to your lawyer. So whether you're using it to create a legally valid will or just to prepare for your meeting with your own lawyer, I think it's a great tool. So I think Jen.
And Andrew, what qualifies as overly complicated finances?
So I would say if you have a privately owned business, so if you have a farm that has a couple of different people who might own it and one person who operates it, even if it's not, say, worth more than $5 million, but it might be complicated because you have a number of different players involved in it. If you're, probably if you're filing K-1s on your taxes instead of just W-2s, then that's a sign that you might want to that you probably have a more complicated estate if you have, different kinds of trusts that are feeding into your estate. But for most people,
that's helpful.
Most people, it's not, it's fine. So when you start at the site, you'll start here. This is a shared site between the Michigan and Wisconsin conferences. So you'll see it says the Wisconsin Foundation and Michigan Foundation here on the pop-up screen. These are two related organizations for both conferences. So this is the basic. Hold on, I got to get rid of my floating controls. So this is the opening screen. You'll follow the path. You'll log in to get started. I've already started one to give you a sense of how this works. As you work through the website, it takes about 20 minutes or longer, but about 20 minutes to do a basic will. You'll get to a page that will invite you to leave a gift, a charitable gift. You do not have to leave a charitable gift to use this tool. You don't have to leave a charitable gift to a UCC organization to use this tool. This is literally a free tool that anyone can use. So if you have friends who don't go to the UCC, they can also use this tool. If you have church members who don't want to leave a charitable gift, they can use this tool. But it will prompt you to consider leaving a gift. And then you're able to designate churches in Michigan. So let's add that. We'll leave 5%. And then you select the which church you want to leave it to. We're going to pick the Chinese Community Church of Southfield because they are great OCW and basic support supporters. And so we want to include them in our estate plan. And then save and exit. And then you can choose something else. Say we want to give to student scholarships, another 5%. We could choose a designation. We want to have scholarships in Michigan for people becoming pastors.
Now it looks like, Andrew, I couldn't put on there, like Colgate University or.
You can. So there's a box here that says choose another nonprofit. So I'll choose another nonprofit. And I'm going to type in Colgate University. I'll
Okay.
choose the Alumni Corporation. And I'm going to give them 5%. I'm going to say, scholarship for religion majors.
Double religion majors, only double.
Exactly. The super geeky. And so you can leave it to other charities. So you don't have to leave a charitable gift. You can leave a charitable gift, and you can leave it to within the UCC or any organization, any charitable organization. There's also on this site, it will prompt you to include funeral arrangements. Here, this is not part of your will, but it's instructions that will go with your will. Things like any wishes for your funeral, where you'd want to be buried, charities that you would want your loved ones to support in your memory. So again, just some nice directions that it's prompting us to leave for our loved ones.
I love this because one of the things that I see often is this one about who should people remember with, honorary gifts for you at a funeral. And so often I'll see this, and this is not in any way throwing shade on hospice, which is a fantastic organization, but so many times you'll go to a funeral and the person will have spent, 2 or 3 days a week volunteering at the church. But at the last minute, a family member will say, all gifts in honor of Lillian will go to hospice. And the reason is because hospice always asks, and they should ask, they deserve to ask. But I think we in the church should ask as well.
Yeah, and this allows then the person to say, this is what would have been really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And partly that's so that we don't make the wrong mistakes. My mother-in-law, before she died, I was talking with her, and she had decades ago taught at the School for the Blind, Perkins School for the Blind in Boston. She loved her time teaching there. She herself had become blind later in life. I thought that would be a charity she'd want to give to. When I brought that up to, she said, no way, they've got too much of an endowment. I don't want any gifts there. If I had not had that conversation, I wouldn't have known. And so, because she then was able to say where she'd want gifts in her honor, we were able to do that and pick the right charity, that she didn't have to kind of roll over in our grave if we had chosen the wrong one. There's another piece in here that I want to call attention to.
Andrew, while you're looking for it, can I ask another question? Which
Sure.
is, so for those of us whose wills might be out of date, for example, I would say, in my own case, right, I had written my will when I was serving another church, and I remembered that church in my will from that time, but that church is now closed. What happens when people leave money to a UCC church, for example, that might later be closed?
A great question. So if you've written your will and you leave it to a charity that has closed, that then closes, and you don't update your will, your assets will then be redivided without that charity. So if you'd said, I want 5% left to the closed church and 5% left somewhere else and 80%, left, the executor will just would rejigger what was done with your estate in reflective of that.
Got it.
One of the reasons why we've set this up to go through the Michigan Foundation is so that if a church closes, it would still be a fund in honor of that church. So in this case, the Michigan Foundation would receive it and then would look for the next nearest UCC church to fulfill that ministry, or whatever legacy fund was ongoing from that church that had closed. And so that's a way to protect against that. So your
wait.
wishes then.
Okay, so if I fill this out and put in there, say Plymouth Church, where I'm a member in Grand Rapids, heaven forbid that church was closed down the road, it would go to the foundation, the
Go
Michigan
to the
Foundation.
foundation, that would go into a legacy fund to support the charitable work that
Other-
Plymouth had done. And
other-
likely the foundation board then would direct it to existing work.
Yeah.
Conversely,
And
if Plymouth had
and I-
not closed,
Mhm.
then the foundation would receive it and then pass it on to Plymouth. So it would just be a conduit.
And
Andrew,
Betsy
did you
Dole
see
put a good
Betsy's-
question.
Yeah, see Betsy's
She-
question.
She said, if you leave money to the Michigan Conference intended for your local church, does the Michigan Conference take a percentage of the gift as a service charge? Good question.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, so the money just flows through without, we're not netting out, we're not taking a haircut, as it's sometimes called, on the gift.
In other words, this is a service we're offering, in the hopes that people will remember their churches. If they choose to remember the Michigan Conference as well, that's wonderful. But it's more, so many people don't have a chance to remember their churches.
Yeah, and it's really also because the core mission of the Michigan Conference is to strengthen UCC congregations. And so, this tool, I think what I love about this tool is it's useful, it's practical, and it also this is one of our core things. And so we find good pastors, we do good youth programming, and now we have a financial tool to help all our churches. That's just what we're about.
Yeah. I mean, we are all about, we're selling buildings. We're trying to, create income to do programs that help our churches and our clergy.
I did just want to mention one more thing on that, and then we'll get to questions. So on Free Will, when it walks you through, there is a question around, do you have any pets? And I like that they built this in. If you have pets, you can name your pet, give the species, and then set aside money for your pet's needs. You can't leave $1 million to a dog or a cat, but you can leave $1 million for someone to care for the dog or cat. And so Free Will includes that, which is, I think, for many people, something they want to think about: what happens to their animals should they pass away.
Huh.
So this is one of the tools that we're bringing to people in our congregations that I hope our congregations will be using. We also have a tool for making stock gifts and gifts from an IRA. I haven't talked about that, but we'll include that in the follow-up materials. Now I just want to open it up if there are questions that are on your hearts or on your minds about plan giving for yourself or how to promote this within your congregation.
I have a question, Andrew. So I'm like looking at the website as you're going through it, and let's say I get through all the steps, and I want this to be some kind of binding legal contract. How does that happen? Do I just print it out and sign it, and then it's there, or is there another step?
Yeah, I think there was a famous case right in Michigan where wasn't it Aretha Franklin had a will on a napkin that she'd stuck in her couch, and it ended up being recognized as legally valid. I would not recommend that as an approach. I think that's not the preferred option. So as you work your way through this through the website, at the end you'll click finalized. Free Will is not it's not filing the will. So this is you'll get a printout, and then it will include directions about what you need to do in the case of Michigan or wherever you live. So say you're in a Michigan congregation, but your residence is mostly in your legal residence is in Florida. It will give you Florida specific rules for how to validate the will, whether it needs to be notarized or whether you need to have just 2 witnesses. So typically then you print it out, sign it, notarize it if necessary, and then keep an original in a safe place. I would give copies to trusted people in your life, certainly the executor of the will, and so that there's a backup copy should, say you have a house fire and you lose your original copy. But there will be directions when you do the printout of how to file it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Galen?
Does it include the directions for a medical directive also?
So it will prompt you, after you complete your will, it will prompt you to do a financial power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney and a living will. So those are additional things that it will prompt you to do in your estate plan. And again, state-specific forms for that.
Can you define that, Andrew? Like, what's a financial power of attorney for those who don't know?
Yeah. So a power of attorney is something that you can designate someone as your power of attorney. It means they have the legal ability to act on your behalf if you're unable to do so. So my father passed away after many years with Alzheimer's this summer. So for many years, I was his financial power attorney, which meant that I had control over all of his assets. I could go into the bank as my father, essentially legally as my father, make decisions about opening, closing accounts, file his taxes, sign on his behalf on checks. And then a medical power of attorney means that I was then at that stage of his life when he was unable to make his own medical decisions, I could make decisions about his care. So I could act as if I were Tom Warner for all legal purposes. And then a living will is healthcare directive, allows you to say, to give advice to your healthcare power of attorney and your care team about, what you're receiving. So if you're, say, on a ventilator, then what would you want your medical team to know about your wishes for ongoing care? If you're brought into the hospital unconscious and need to have a surgery, would you want the surgery? To make those decisions in advance.
Very helpful. And just for people who don't know, what's the executor?
So the executor is the person is different than a power attorney for financial power attorney. That person makes decisions for you while you're alive. And so as long as you're alive, that person is in charge of making decisions. Then when you die, the executor then is in charge of the estate, and they're the person acting on behalf of the estate. Often, I think for most people, it's the same person. But in some cases, it might be someone different. Maybe there's a close relative who lives near you who you want for your financial power of attorney, but then you want someone else to handle your estate once you're gone.
I'm not sure if you mentioned a difference between a living trust and a living will, or if there is a difference.
Well, I think again, I was trained as a pastor and not a lawyer, but my understanding would be that a living will would be directions around healthcare, and a living trust or a revocable trust is a trust that you set up that then you can change during your lifetime. And so for many people, they might create a trust to hold their assets. And again, for many people, a trust isn't necessary, although they're becoming more common where people decide to create a trust. And then it's revocable. You can change your trust during your lifetime, but then when you pass away, it becomes an irrevocable or unchangeable trust, and then may go on for some period of time, depending on your instructions in the trust.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend giving to endowment for your local church or giving it unrestricted? I've seen some churches that have endowments for the building and endowments for the organ and endowments for the pastor's salary. What do you think about that?
I guess I think that the donor should set up what's most meaningful to them. So this is really a chance for the donor to think of the gift that they most want to give. I think of a woman I know, Emma, who loves her local church, but didn't love their endowment because their endowment committee spent very little of their endowment every year to do something. And kind of 1 or 2%, because their endowment policy was that half of their earnings had to be reinvested in the endowment and so much had to go for the administration of the endowment. And by the end of the day, they had $1 million endowment and very little was spent on mission. So Emma was like, I'm not giving to the endowment. What she did in her gift was to say, I want my gift to sustain whatever my pledge was when I died for however long the money lasts, because I care about this local church. Now, practically, Emma's one of the top donors in our congregation. So this is a a real practical gift to the church to say, her pledge is going to be sustained for a number of years to allow the church to find new sources of support. But her goal was to say, I don't want my endowment to end up in an investment account without the money being used. That was a brilliant idea, I think, that Emma had. I love it. I love that she is saying, I trust the church council and the congregational meeting to make good choices, and I want this money to be spent in some short order of time. I, on the other hand, I kind of like endowments. So my planned gifts go to endowments because I like the idea of money being invested and used over a long horizon. I think it took me a while to build up the money that I have in my estate. I want it to last for a good long while. So Emma and I are different that way, but I love that Emma made a choice that was right for her and that I get to make a choice that was right for me. So I don't really have I wouldn't really say that you ought to do endowments over not doing endowments. I think you ought to do what makes the most sense to you as a person. I will say for the charities, it's really helpful, particularly if we are wanting it to be an endowed gift, to make it unrestricted about the purpose, because it's hard for us to anticipate what life might be like in 30 years or 40 years or 100 years. There's a church in Wisconsin. This may be apocryphal, but it's a story that's passed around Wisconsin, that there's a church in Kenosha that was given a large bequest in the 1900s or late 1800s to help resettle Welsh immigrants, impoverished Welsh immigrants to the city of Kenosha, which was what they were dealing with in like 1890 is poor Welsh farmers. But like, they're no longer coming to Kenosha. They're no longer coming to America. So to have an endowment for something that doesn't exist is really limiting. So if we do leave an endowment gift, I think I would recommend leaving it as unrestricted as possible as to the purpose. But all unrestricted gifts are really the most helpful to churches, because then they get to say, the leadership gets to say at this particular moment, what is God calling us to do? And the church can be in a different moment than when we wrote our will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. But I also think, churches are just like families in some ways, in that if you can make the difficult decisions about where the money goes in the church, like the form, such as endowment versus not an endowment, that is really helpful to the church because I've seen churches that have gotten a windfall, this amazing gift, and then have gone into high conflict because it wasn't clear what the donor wanted done with the gift, whether it should be used for endowment or it should be used for income. And so, um, just like with our families, it's helpful to know what we want in a general way and take
Yes.
that burden off of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's work that congregations can do in advance of receiving gifts to come up with what are the rules of the game. And what's unfortunate, you can't deal the cards out and look at your hand and then decide what game you're playing. That's not
Yeah.
fair. And so it's helpful for churches to set up in advance what will we do with gifts before they come.
Yes. Like
It's
in
just
churches that I've served, they had a policy where if they got a significant large bequest, it would automatically go in the endowment. Other
Mhm.
churches had a different plan. It would go somewhere else, but or some percentage. But it's good for people to know. Yeah. So the church doesn't get in a conflict about it, trying to imagine what it was that Andrew had in mind
Yeah.
when he gave it. And also, is this a good time to just mention we are gonna, oh, we do have to wrap up, but well, we will have our final blessing because we do that first, but then I do have a point if people want to stay on. But for the blessing, to all of you, thank you, Andrew, and may the peace of Christ, which passes all human understanding, fill our hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and the power and generosity of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Um, for those who have a second, I was going to say it's always good for a church to have a gift policy. Do you want to say a word about that, Andrew, and what that is?
Yeah. So a gift policy is setting up in advance the rules around what kind of gifts you will receive and how decisions about them will be made. And so, kind of thinking through the variety of ways that people can make a gift and what the church is ready or not to accept. So like I said, anything of value can be given. You can give a second home. You can actually give a future harvest of corn to a charity. But not everyone is set up to receive those kinds of gifts. And so, and how will decisions be made? So for the example of the second home, I was at a training event for fundraisers, and a woman that I was talking with was from Michigan, and the area where she lived in, it had flooding. And she said, "You won't believe the number of calls I'm getting about donations of homes." And so what do you do if someone wants to
A
donate
home
a
that's about
property?
to fall in the ocean.
Yeah, or it's like filled with mold, and so it's like a worthless property, and the person wants to donate it and deduct what had been the Zillow value of the home a day before. So like a gift acceptance policy would say, if you're giving a gift and it's not marketable, meaning like say it's a Renoir, who's going to decide the value? Well, the donor is responsible for hiring the appraiser. Or what many churches in Wisconsin have done is to say, these are the gifts that we accept, gifts of da 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 da. If you have other kinds of gifts, please work with the Wisconsin Foundation. They can receive that kind of gift for us, and I think we'll offer the same in Michigan. If you have a gift of a house, then the church might say, if you have a gift of a house or other kind of assets, work with the Michigan Foundation to receive and process that gift. The others is if the church has to say, no, we can't receive this, say Lillian wanted to give her gift of 1,000 Smith and Wesson rifles to the Michigan conference. Who's going to say no? Well, you have to decide in advance who's going to say no. We can't receive that kind of gift. And so again, to have the rules of the game set in advance.
Actually, and farmland is a complicated one. One of the churches I was thinking of in Iowa that had a conflict about it was given some really valuable acreage, right? And the debate in a church that had a lot of expertise in farming because of the members, the debate was, do we sell the land, and take the, or do we have someone farm the land and take the income? And there was big divides on that. So yeah, gift policies are a great idea. Like the classic one is everyone wants to give the church, like we want the church to have a church van, and then here's my old van.
Yeah.
And the church doesn't have the money for the insurance or the, all the things. Yeah.
Another, common one is what to do with gifts of stock, that sometimes churches don't have a policy. And so someone gives a stock, and then the church holds on to the stock instead of selling it right away. And just to have those kind of processes in place so that our lay volunteers know what they should be doing when they get a gift.
Well, thank you, Andrew. And Andrew's referenced several times Michigan Conference Foundation that we are going to be launching soon as a philanthropic avenue, but also as a place where our churches can make investments and support the wider church while doing so. So stay tuned for more info on that. But Andrew, thanks so much for being with us, and blessings to all of you who've been on this call. We'll have this video taped